Hi friends, welcome to Algo Lesson. So in this video, we are going to discuss three important topic of C++, that is variable, constant and literals. So in this video, I'm going to discuss the first two topic, that is variable and constant. And in our next video, I'm going to discuss literals in detail. So let's start with the topic. So the first topic that we are going to cover is variables in C++. So let's understand what is variables. Variables are container that are used for storing data values. Okay, so variables are basically a container in which we are going to store our data. The data can be of any type. It can be a number, it can be a character, or it can be a series of character. It can be a decimal value. Basically, variable is a name that is given to a memory location, and this name must be unique. We cannot use the same variable name to different memory location. So basically, a variable is a name given to a particular memory location in which we are going to store our data values. So, and this name that we are giving to that memory location should be unique. Like we cannot use the same name for two different memory location. So let's understand this with one example. This is one variable name which is count, and it is of type integer. Okay, so here the count is a variable name, and this int, which is known as the data type, and we are going to store a value 9 in this variable count. So here we have given a name to a particular memory location, and that name is count, and we can store the data value of integer type in that particular memory location. So basically this int decide what kind of data we are going to store, and this is the variable of integer type. We are going to cover this data type in detail in our upcoming videos. I've just taken one example to make you understand what is a variable. So when we create a variable, basically it give, like, let's say this is a container, and this is a place or a memory location, and we have given this memory location a name count, and we are going to store a value of integer type which is 9 in this container. So this is what a variable is. So basically, the value that we store in a variable can be changed during the execution of the program. What does it mean? It means that let's say we have created one variable count, and we have stored variable value 9 in it. So while executing the code, it is possible that the value which we have stored in a variable initially will change while the execution of the program based on its requirement and logic. Okay, so these are the few important points of variables, and it is very important part to understand because we are going to create multiple variables while writing codes. So let's understand what are the rules that we need to follow to give a name or to decide the name of a variable. So these are the rules that we need to follow to decide a name or to give a name to a variable. The first rule is saying that a variable name can contain alphabet, digit, and underscore. So whatever name you are giving to a memory location, that must contain either an alphabet, a digit, or an underscore. The second rule, it is saying that a variable name must begin with alphabet or underscore. It cannot begin with a number. Okay. So let's say you are taking a variable name, so it should start with either an alphabet or an underscore. You cannot start a variable name like one count. Okay. The third rule is a variable name should not contain any white space, special characters like C sharp, dollar symbol, at the rate. These are some special character. You cannot use this special character while naming a variable. The fourth rule, it is saying that a variable name is case sensitive in nature. Let's say, for example, this is num. It is a variable name, and this is also a num, and it is also another variable name. So if you observe here, we have taken all alphabet is small, and here the alphabet N is capital. So this two is considered as two different variable name. They both are not same. They will denote two different memory location. Okay. Now, one last important rule that we need to follow while naming a variable, that is, you cannot use C++ reserve keywords. Basically, keywords are those words in C++ programming language whose feature or specification is already defined by the programming language. Like we use cout to print output, so we cannot use cout as our variable name. Similarly, int is used to define whether the data type is of integer type. So we cannot use int as our variable name. Like this, there are multiple keywords and we cannot use those keywords as our variable name. So these are the rules that we need to follow while creating a variable in C++. Let's understand this with a few examples. So if you see the first example here, we have created an integer type variable and the name of this variable is num underscore 1. So if we follow our rule, we can see that the name of the variable is starting with alphabet. It contains alphabet, number and underscore. So it is a correct naming convention for naming a variable. Okay, that's why it is a right way of creating a variable. The second you can see is a float pi. A float is a data type and pi, which is pi, is the name of the variable. Here we have used only alphabet, so it is a correct way of creating a variable. But if you observe here, we have created a char, which is a character type variable, and this name of the variable is starting with digit. But if you observe, our second rule is saying that it cannot begin with a number. So it is not the correct way of creating a variable. So I hope you understand what are the rules that we need to follow to create a variable or to define the name of a variable. We are going to understand this in more detail when we'll do coding. So I hope you understand this much. So the next topic that we need to cover is constant in C++. So let's understand this topic. Constants are those kind of variables whose values are fixed and cannot be changed. Okay. So far we have discussed variable and we have learned that whatever value we store in a variable can be changed during the execution of the program, and we can update the value of that variable. But in case of constant, we cannot change the value. Once we assign a particular value to a constant, it will remain fixed for the entire execution of the program. Now, these kind of variables are defined using a const keyword and they have read-only properties. Okay, so you cannot update these values while the execution or while running the code. So they have only read property, which means you can use the value stored in a constant uh, variable. You cannot update it. Let's understand this with one example. So this is a constant. So we have defined a const keyword in the beginning. Then we have defined a data type, which is a float type, and then we have given the name to that constant, which is pi, and we have initialized this constant with a value 3.14. Uh, so for now, the constant pi, the value 3.14 is fixed. You cannot update the value of pi while execution. If you will try to update the value, then it will give you an error because the value of pi is constant and we cannot change it. So I hope you understand the basic difference between what is variable and what is constant. Basically, variable in which the value can be vary, where constant the value cannot be vary. And it is a rule that whenever you are creating a constant, you must or you should give the name in a capital letter. Okay, like here pi is given in all capital letters. Okay, this is just a basic rule. Even if you will write in small letters, then also it will not give an error. But there is a naming convention that we follow. So now let's move to our compiler and see how this variable and constant work in C++ programming. Okay guys, so now we are inside our code editor, and here I have created few variables and constant for your example. The first variable I've created, which is num, and I have initialized this variable with value 10. The second variable which I have created is num underscore 2, and I have initialized 15 in this variable. The third variable I have created starting with @sum, and I have initialized the value 3.14 in this. But if you remember, we cannot include special characters while naming a variable. But still I have included just to show you what error we are going to get. Similarly, while creating a constant, I have initialized this constant with value 100. But in the next line, I try to change or update the value of answer. If you know that constant is read-only value and we cannot update the value of a constant in the program, it is only defined once and used inside the entire program. Okay, so here I have printed all these values by using cout operation. Now let's execute the code and see what error or what output we are getting. So I'm running the code. So if you see in our terminal, we are getting some error. What error we are getting? See, if you observe, we are getting error like this float @sum. Here it is saying that is a error in this program. We cannot use in our variable name. While printing this value @sum, here also it is saying that it is not the correct way of creating a variable. So we cannot use while creating a variable. Okay. And here in case of constant, it is saying that assignment of read only variable answer. As we have already discussed, constant is read only variable, so we cannot update the value of constant once after the declaration. Okay, we only assign a constant value only one time, and we cannot update it. So these are the error that we are getting in our code. Now let's correct our error and see what output we will get. So I'm removing this symbol from here, and I'm removing this line because we cannot update the value of constant. I'm removing this from cout operation. Now it's look fine. I think we have not done any error now. Let's execute the code again and see what output we are getting. So I'm executing the code, and if you will see that we are getting all our output. The value of num is 10. The value of num underscore 2 is 15. The sum value is 3.5, and the constant value which is 100. Okay, so we are getting the correct output and our code is executed successfully. So I hope now you understand what is the difference between variable and constant, and where we can use variable and where we can use constant. So in different situation we need different variable and constant in our program.